Welcome back to the Content Area Instructional Strategies workshop with Southern Utah University. This video focuses on the importance of written fluency. So in this video, we'll review how language-based or meaning-based activity is different from fluency practice. And then we'll share some ideas so that you can implement at least one written language fluency activity in your teaching. So as a reminder, the framework we've been using in this course is to help us teach language explicitly, and that's the highlighting the language of your content area portion. Then we talked about reading and listening activities, the input, and the speaking and writing activities, the output. And then finally, we're talking about suggestions for helping students build fluency. Ideally, in our courses, we want to have an equal balance of these different quadrants. We want to make sure that we are highlighting language, that we're giving students opportunities for input and output with support, where they're focusing on the meaning and not just the language. And then that we're repeating those types of activities over and over again so that students are building that fluency, that automaticity, and that independence. So again, if we think about Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, that center is what the learner can do unaided. So these are the things where they built the fluency. These are the things we want to practice fluency with. That second circle is things that learners can do with guidance. Those might be input and output activities that we do with students to help them focus on meaning. Things outside of that are things that students don't have the language for yet. So those are things we don't want to practice. We want to teach them the language, help them build competence, and guide them through reading, writing, listening, and speaking activities. And then once they've done those things, we want to repeat those things over and over again to build fluency. So we're not introducing new language. We're not introducing new tasks. We're working with the same language, same kinds of tasks, just with repetition. And if we do make variations, they're pretty minor so that students aren't having to learn new things. They're just building their confidence and their ability to complete tasks in an efficient and comfortable manner. So that's what we want to focus on, is making sure that students get both fluency in reading activities and in writing activities. So here's some suggestions for building reading fluency. You could do the pushed reading activity. This is where you give students an at-level text. It's not too hard. It's something that they could do independently, and you tell them to read it for a certain time period, maybe 2 minutes. It's going to be longer than what they can read in 2 minutes, but you want to start them off with that time. At the end of 2 minutes, tell them to mark whichever word or line they got to in those 2 minutes. Then tell them go back to the start of the passage and read it again for 2 minutes. But tell them the goal is that because you've already read it, you should be able to move through it more quickly and push yourself to read further. And you may repeat this 3 or 4 times. The goal is to help them build their confidence to read more quickly and help them recognize that sometimes reading something twice quickly is better than reading it once very carefully. Because when we read it twice, we get that repetition and we start to notice which parts matter the most. Now, another way to build reading fluency is to have students listen while they're reading. So a teacher could read aloud to them and they all have a copy and they listen. So they're getting used to letting their eyes follow the page at a faster pace than they might use naturally. Or if there are recordings of the passages that you want your students to read, you could have them listen to the recording while they read. Especially if students are working with a passage that's definitely at level or even below level, then you could invite them to listen at double time or 1.5 time. And that's helping them get used to following along the page at a quicker pace so that they're more efficient with their time when they read and they don't take so long. Another way to also build fluency, and this can be especially helpful when you're building fluency with new vocabulary or when you're working with lower level learners, is to use a word wall. Have a place in your classroom where you have common words or phrases that students will use. I use this in academic writing classes where we learn different phrases that help accomplish different rhetorical moves or different goals for organizing and communicating structure to readers. And so we put these phrases on the classroom wall, and they're organized so that students see those phrases frequently, and they're building their fluency at recognizing those phrases and what they mean. If you're working with lower level learners, your word wall might have lots of pictures next to the words to help them make the connection between the written form of the word and its meaning. You can also do writing fluency activities. So timed writing is something that a lot of us like to use. I use timed writing frequently in my classes, both for native English speakers and non-native English speakers. And all the students tell me that it really helps them build their confidence to write better. And when they have to write a more complicated paper, like a research paper, they're used to producing language more quickly so that they can accomplish a homework task faster than they would have if they hadn't been practicing that timed writing. One of the things that I've learned from another teacher is that she varies the amount of time. Sometimes she gives them timed writing that's only 5 minutes, but it's a small task. And I usually use 30 minutes all the time, and I do a similar task. But it can be helpful to do different varieties of tasks with timed writing and different times that you want to give them to write in. And so that way they're not just learning one type of writing assignment, they can learn other types of writing assignment and how to work efficiently on those tasks as well. Social writing can be another one. I will often pair students up using instant messaging. So if they have devices, I put them with a partner, I give them a question for the whole class to work on, and then they have to converse for so many minutes with their partner. And the goal is to build their fluency, their comfort at typing or messaging quickly to get a response so their partner isn't waiting so long. If technology isn't available or appropriate for your group of students, you can do a similar thing with paper. Students share a piece of paper. One student takes it and they write the question. They pass it to the next student who writes an answer, creates a new question, and passes it back. And so they create a written conversation that is live. And they taking turns back and forth, and that extra pressure of someone waiting for your response can help students develop their fluency. You just need to make sure that the questions, the tasks that you give students are things that they've already practiced before. They already have the language, they already know the grammar, and what they're working on is producing language and grammar more quickly. A variation of this might be the pass it on game that I like to use a lot with students, where I give them a long sheet of paper. At the top, I tell them to write a sentence, often that fits maybe a particular content topic that we're discussing, or maybe we learned a grammatical structure or some vocabulary words, and have them just write, whether it's a simple sentence or sometimes we're working on compound sentences or complex sentences. And I tell them, go ahead and write a sentence that fits the requirement of whatever form we are focusing on. After they've written their sentence, they pass their paper to the next student in the group. That student will read the sentence and draw a picture of it. So all students are doing this at the same time. After they write a sentence, they pass it on, they receive a new one. They read the sentence, they quickly underneath it draw a picture to represent that sentence, and I time them. I usually give them, you have a minute to draw your picture. Then they fold back the original sentence so only their picture is visible. They pass it on again, they get a new one. Now they only have a picture. They have to look at that picture and figure out what sentence the original student might have written to inspire that sentence. And again, I time them, maybe it's only a minute, to write out their sentence. They pass it on again, and we repeat. And we go through this maybe 5 times, maybe 7 times, and alternating with sentences, pictures, sentences, pictures. In the end, students will open up the last sentence to see if the last sentence matched the first sentence, if the meaning stayed similar or the same, or if there were changes as a result of playing this telephone game where the message might change as it passes through different people. But it's a great way to put some pressure on students to write more quickly because someone else is waiting for their response. So these are all different types of suggestions to help students build both reading fluency or writing fluency. We want to keep in mind we're not introducing new concepts, and we're not doing new types of tasks or new types of language. Instead, we're working with familiar tasks and familiar language to help students build their fluency. And the goal here is this will help them be more independent, this will help them be more automatic, and they'll be able to communicate at a more comfortable rate.